The Israelites tasted freedom for the first time, leaving behind Egypt's chains. The air was filled with a sense of liberation, a new beginning after centuries of bondage. They marched forward, their hearts filled with hope and uncertainty, stepping into the vast unknown of the desert, and crossing the parted Red Sea. The miraculous sight of towering walls of water on either side was a testament to the power guiding them. Each step through the seabed was a step away from their past and towards a future promised by God. God led them with a cloud by day, a constant reminder of His presence. This divine guide shielded them from the scorching sun, providing direction and comfort in the vast arid wilderness. And fire by night, guiding them through the harsh wilderness. The fire illuminated their path, a beacon of hope and safety in the cold, dark nights, ensuring they never lost their way. Water was scarce, food uncertain, but God provided sweetening bitter water, turning the undrinkable into life-sustaining refreshment. Every drop was a miracle, a sign of His care, sending manna and quail. Each morning the ground was covered with manna, a heavenly bread, and in the evenings, quail filled their camp. These provisions were daily reminders of God's unfailing provision. Through every hardship, God taught them to trust Him. The desert was a crucible, shaping their faith and dependence on Him. Every trial was a lesson in trust, every challenge an opportunity to witness His power. After 3 months, they arrived at Mount Sinai, the mountain of God, rising like a jagged tooth from the desert. This was not just a physical destination but a spiritual one, where they would encounter the divine. Here, God would meet them, not just to free them, but to make them His own. The mountain stood as a symbol of His presence and the covenant He was about to establish with them. The people camped in Sinai's shadow. Thousands of tents spread across the plain. The encampment was a bustling community, united by their shared journey and the promise of what was to come. Laughter, stories, and hope filled the air as they gazed at the mountain, anticipation building. The campfires were places of fellowship, where the past was recounted and the future imagined. They had followed the cloud and fire to this moment. These symbols of divine guidance had led them faithfully, and now they stood on the brink of a new chapter. Something world-changing was about to happen. The air was thick with anticipation. The dawn of a new era was at hand. God had brought them here for a reason. Every step of their journey had led to this divine appointment, a moment that would define their identity and purpose. At Sinai's foot, they would become a nation bound to God by a holy promise. This covenant would shape their destiny and their relationship with the divine. The journey from slavery was over. A new journey with God was about to begin. This was the threshold of a new beginning, a sacred moment in their history. The stage was set for a divine encounter. The mountain loomed large, a silent witness to the unfolding of a divine plan. Life in the camp was a blend of routine and awe, a fragile existence shaped by the harsh desert and the promise of something greater. Each day the people woke to the endless expanse of sand and sky, their hearts both weary and hopeful. Every morning they gathered manna, a miraculous bread from heaven, a daily reminder of God's faithfulness and provision. The dew would lift, revealing sustenance scattered across the ground, enough for each family, never too much or too little. This simple act became a ritual, a moment of gratitude and wonder, as parents and children worked side by side, collecting what they needed for the day. Then, God instructed Moses, the people must wash and prepare themselves, for in 3 days, He would descend on the mountain in a display of divine power and holiness. A boundary was set around the mountain. No one could cross it or even touch the mountain's base, for it was now holy ground, set apart for a sacred encounter. As the sun set, the camp grew quiet. People reflected, prayed, and cleansed their hearts, filled with anticipation and a sense of reverence for what was to come. Parents whispered to their children, telling stories of the God who had defeated Pharaoh and parted the sea, reminding them that this same God was coming to speak to them. The people stood ready, clothed in clean garments, their faces washed and spirits prepared, waiting for the third day with a mixture of fear and hope. As dawn broke over Sinai, the air was charged with anticipation. The first rays of sunlight painted the mountain in gold, and a hush fell over the camp. They gathered at the mountain's edge, breathless and united, prepared for heaven to touch earth, for the ordinary to become extraordinary. The moment of encounter had arrived, a moment that would change their lives and echo through generations. While the people waited, Moses climbed alone. He ascended Sinai, leaving behind the camp and entering the cloud of God's glory. The climb was steep, the air thin, the world below fading away. Moses stepped into the thick swirling cloud, a place of mystery and power. Alone with God, he was ready to receive words that would shape a nation. Moses, once a shepherd, now stood on holy ground as Israel's mediator. He was prepared to bring God's message back to the people. Suddenly, Sinai shook with a violent tremor. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and a thick cloud engulfed the peak. A trumpet blast, louder and louder, filled the air, not of human origin but heavenly. The people trembled, faces pale with awe and fear. The mountain burned with holy fire, smoke billowing like a furnace. God's power was on full display, a consuming fire, a living God. The spectacle silenced every voice. This was no ordinary moment. God was about to speak. All eyes and hearts were fixed on the mountain. Out of fire and smoke, God's voice thundered, echoing across the barren wilderness and shaking the very ground beneath the people's feet. The mountain blazed with a holy fire, and the air was thick with awe and fear. "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." With these words, God reminded them of his power and his love, the one who had rescued them from oppression and led them to freedom. He declared, "You shall have no other gods before me." This was a call to loyalty, to recognize the one true God above all else in a world filled with idols and false hopes. "You shall not make idols or misuse my name." These commands set a new standard, calling the people to honor God with their words and their worship, to reject the empty images of their neighbors. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. This was an invitation to rest, to trust in God's provision, and to set aside time for reflection and gratitude. Honor your father and mother. "You shall not murder." These words protected the bonds of family and the sacredness of life itself. "You shall not commit adultery." "You shall not steal." Each commandment was a safeguard for trust, dignity, and respect among the people. "You shall not give false testimony." "You shall not covet." Truthfulness and contentment were to be the foundation of their community. These were not just rules, but a blueprint for a just and loving society, a vision for a people who would live differently from the world around them. God's commands protected life, truth, family, and contentment. They were a gift, shaping every relationship and every day. They called for reverence, honesty, and trust in God's provision, inviting the people to walk in humility and gratitude. The people heard the voice of the Creator, words that would echo through history and shape the conscience of nations for generations to come. The commandments reached beyond actions to the heart, calling each person to examine their motives and desires. God was shaping a people set apart for him, a community marked by justice, compassion, and faithfulness. The world would never be the same. From that mountain a new way of living was born, one that still calls to us today. Overwhelmed, the people begged Moses to speak for them. Moses entered the darkness, alone with God for 40 days and nights. God inscribed the 10 Commandments on stone tablets, his law, permanent and unbreakable. When Moses descended, his face shone with God's glory. The people saw the radiance and shrank back in awe. Moses reassured them, holding the tablets, God's covenant, written by his own hand. These stones were more than law, they were the foundation of a new nation. Moses brought God's words not just in memory but carved in enduring stone. The people witnessed the reality of God's presence among them. The covenant was now real, tangible, and everlasting. Moses gathered the people and read God's law aloud. The people responded as one, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Moses built an altar, offered sacrifices, and sealed the covenant with blood. The 10 Commandments became the sign of their relationship with God. Israel was now God's treasured possession, bound by promise and law. These commands were not burdens, but a guide to freedom and peace. They revealed God's character, holy, just, and loving. The light from Sinai still shines, guiding all who seek God's way. The journey from slavery to covenant was complete. A new life with God had begun.